welcome to this episode of Mindset Mentoring for families, athletes, and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck, and we are continuing our numerous series of shows talking about mental health and physical health and resilience and all the interplay that your emotional well-being and mindset and how they all play out. So today we'll be talking more about that with Marilyn Robinson, so stay tuned for that.
Are you ready to elevate your success, whether you're a student, athlete, parent, or entrepreneur? Success Institutes offers transformational programs designed to unlock your full potential in every area of life. With webinars, masterclasses, and mindset training, we provide cutting-edge techniques to help you master your thinking. It's more than just knowledge. It's a life-changing transformation. Instead of paying thousands for a university course, our programs guide you in building the mental, emotional, and physical habits for true success and confidence. Starting with From Stuck to Unstoppable and Unchain Your Potential, we have something for everyone, including tools for families, like our Mindset Transformation Training and 10-Week Habits program. Plus, parents receive our book Confidence for Teens, a new chapter for family, free with just shipping and handling, to help guide their teens through personal growth. And whenever you enroll your family in any of our Mindset of a Champion training packages, you will get our bonus course on winning college scholarships, potentially saving you tens of thousands of dollars. Worried about time, cost, or even willpower? Our programs are designed to fit seamlessly into your life without overwhelming you. We help you prioritize effectively, leveraging the power of synergy and accountability partners to significantly boost follow-through and motivation, ensuring your team stays engaged. And compared to the cost of traditional education, what we offer is life-changing and far more affordable in the long run. If you're asking, will this really work for me? We believe it will. We even offer a satisfaction guarantee if you complete the program and aren't satisfied. Take the next step. Schedule your discovery call today, and let's unlock your full potential together.
Welcome back. And today on our show, we are honored to welcome Marilyn Robinson, a mentor in raising resilient kids and a beacon of strength through personal tragedy. Marilyn transformed her early life challenges into a commitment to support others, leveraging her experiences to mentor parents and promote emotional and mental well-being. With over 35 years of marriage and a successful high-tech career, she balances family, adventure, and advocacy, always emphasizing the importance of turning a life's events into lessons for growth. Join us as Marilyn shares her profound insights into the interplay of mindset, resilience, and well-being. Welcome, Marilyn, to the show. It's an honor to have you today.
Hello. So glad to be here. One of my favorite topics, mindset.
Well, great, because that's my favorite topic as well. And of course, it impacts so much of what we do, and sometimes we don't give it enough attention. I would love for you to begin right off with kind of sharing who you are, your story, and when you were pretty young, you experienced tragedy in your life, and all that kind of factors into where you're at today. So kind of share that with our audience.
Yeah, so I used to live in LA, and it was I was 10 years old when my parents and my brother, actually, also. My brother was the pilot. They went off for a plane ride on a Sunday, and unfortunately, when they were coming back to the small airport that didn't have a tower, it was just operated by radio. They collided with another plane that was also flying in the immediate area, and I lost all three of them. And so, of course, the first thing as a 10-year-old child, you question God for why did he do it? Why did he do it? How could he do this to me? But I think the bottom line is that I had a purpose in life, and God started it then. The thing that impacted me most was I was pretty much left to step up and really just become, I hate to say it, but at 10 years old, I became adult. I decided that I was going to take care of myself, that I needed to be strong. And even it was interesting because I still remember going to the funeral and having a lot of my classmates there. And I wanted to be strong for them. I didn't actually cry at the funeral because I had put on this shield, emotional control shield at 10 years old, to say, I want it to be a pleasant event for them. I don't want, them to be uncomfortable and burdened around me. So that was the first step. But there's a lot of other lessons. I can move on to the next one if you want.
Yeah, well, you did say one thing in there, which you mentioned that you felt that God had a purpose for you. So, did faith play in to that at that age, at 10 years old? Had you been brought up in any sort of faith tradition? So, how did that kind of play into, dealing with such a tragedy at such a young age?
Yeah, it had a mild. I mean, we were raised Catholic, and I had gone through several of the different ceremonies that you go through as far as accepting Jesus Christ, and those process steps through the Catholic Church. So it was in the background that that things happen for a reason, but I didn't know at the age of 10 how to decipher that.
Yeah. Okay. So you're 10 years old. You've lost your family. What happened? Like, where did you go? and what was that transition? Whatever that was, what was that like?
Yeah. So I was very fortunate because, the unfortunate part was my parents did not have a will. They didn't have anything set up. But the fortunate part was I had an older sister. She was the oldest. I was the youngest. She was 26 at the time. And I barely knew her because she lived in Northern California and I lived in Southern California. And we saw each other maybe, luckily, once a year. Either we would go north or she would come down. So I really didn't know her. She was really a stranger. But I was blessed in the fact that I had her. And the other option was, there was three of us actually. There was my sister Debbie, who was 15, my sister Sharon, who was 13, and I was 10. And it was one of those situations where she either took all three of us or we all had godparents. So the option was to farm us off to our godparents, which were all three individual families. So if we had gone the godparent route, we would not have been raised together. And to be honest, none of us liked our godparents. We were like, oh, gross. It would entail one of us moving to Michigan, and we don't know those relatives at all. And then my godparent, I didn't think very highly of him. So it's like, so we were very blessed that she was married to an open-hearted Italian man whose family was so important, that they stepped up and said they would take all three of us. And the struggle is again, here's a 26-year-old, and it turned out that she was pregnant with her first son, and she had to take on going through all of the legalities of no will, how to liquefy, all that paperwork stuff. And while all that was going on, they had to feed three more families, three more mouths, and so we did go on food stamps. We did, have to reach out to different social organizations for assistance, because we had no income or funds coming from my family estate yet, and there wasn't much to have anyway. But so we moved north. And I moved from what I call Cement City. I lived in a community, suburbia, where you walk, sidewalks, streets, and all that, to living in the country, outside of a small town in Northern California in the Sierras. So that was an adaptation. So the transition to living with her was not that difficult because I was raised to respect your elders, and to me, she became my elder, and my mom raised us, to be supportive and to do as you're told. So when my sister, set up structure, of how we were going to work as a family unit, I didn't have any problems with that. I also got to watch my 15-year-old sister, who was in that rebellious state. We all took the death of our parents differently. My 15-year-old sister was, she was struggling with that identity, at 15. And so she was a little more rebellious. And then my 13-year-old sister, she was at that, kind of hormonal stage. And so, she went through a phase where she blamed my parents for her failure, whatever happened in her life. And she struggled emotionally with the loss of them. But the integration to a new community, and I hate to say it, the Hicks or the hillbillies, I was a cool kid from suburbia, LA, and I come to this small town, with these country bumpkins, I could say. So integrating, and it was in the middle of the school year. So 5th grade, I'm coming in and meeting these new kids. And I thought, this is an opportunity for me to try things that I didn't have access to. So my sister was really good about suggesting, well, why don't you try Girl Scouts? So I go to a Girl Scout meeting. Well, first off, I do not resonate with these girls. These are all little giddy girls that are immature, and I'm like so much more mature. And so I could not relate to the girls at all. And I was really intrigued with Girl Scouts, and I thought, well, this would be fun. And I go, and the meeting, it was just full of all those giddy girls. And I said, oh man, I have to deal with them at school all day long. I don't want to deal with them, any more hours. So I said, okay, I can't do that. And so, I tried 4-H and, had a goat for a while, things like that. But I ended up hanging out with the guys because I don't know, guys are not that, they can be jerks, but they're not into the giddy drama stuff, which that suited me more. But I survived 5th grade, and 6th grade wasn't too bad. I did have a girlfriend that also hung out with the guys that didn't fit into the cutesy giggly girls group. So I did have a girlfriend, but I also had, I was going steady with a boy, and we were getting ready to leave 6th grade and go to middle school. And I thought, well, I really, I don't really want to be going steady when I go to this new school. I want to be open for opportunities and such. Well, little did I know, it was just a transition school. I mean, literally same people, maybe a few more people from a couple of the other schools, but we all kind of just transitioned to a different campus. And so when I got there, the guys kind of turned on me because I broke up with my boyfriend. And so they would stop me in the hall all the time, and they would just harass me. And again, instead of letting them needle me and get under my skin, I just stood there and said, so what are we doing here? And I would just look them in the eye and confront them. And there'd be, 4 or 5 of them, kind of surrounding me, jibbing me and stuff. And I would just, throw up my arms and say, okay, so what are we doing now? I mean, they went as far as, dragging me into the boys' bathroom. And, and I was like, I leaned up against the sink and I said, okay, so what are we doing here? And so the point is I didn't respond how they expected me to respond, so they didn't know what to do. And then finally, while we were standing there, one of the guys goes, I need to go to the bathroom, get her out of here. So I think one of the things as far as adapting was just controlling how I was going to respond to situations, and not giving that my control to them, and responding to their antics that they were looking for. I just kept it calm, and I was ready to deal with whatever they threw at me.
So, where do you think that ability came from? Because I remember when I was a kid, like, you get teased, and there's that playful nature, and I always just assumed when anybody was, quote, making fun of me, they were just teasing me. Like, it was just good natured teasing. And I'm sure, no doubt, that sometimes they didn't mean to just be good natured teasing. They were trying to, needle me or but I just kind of went, well, I know they just like me, so they're just teasing me. That's what people do, right? And I don't, it was a wonderful skill to have going through elementary school and middle school, because I never really felt like I was ever bullied or harassed or any of that. So, where do you think that came from in your case? That ability to just kind of, all right, and deal with it differently than so many people would.
I think I was lucky that I had older sisters, because they can be pretty mean.
Yeah.
My immediate sister was 3 years older than me, and so she also had what they thought at the time was epileptic seizures, but now they've reclassified it as childhood seizures. Not the true full form of epilepsy. She grew out of it. But my mother said, I need, she had a couple of episodes, is all I remember, and they happened during the night. So we shared a room. I obviously knew what was going on. But my mother said, I need you to hang out with her. I need you to go wherever she goes after school and stuff. And I'm going to tell her she has to take you with her to, and keep an eye on you. But I need you to keep an eye on her. And if for some reason she has a seizure, I need you to run to, every door until you find someone that answers. And so, so even at 8 years old, I am been assigned some responsibility, and being able to handle those situations without the drama, without the emotion, and be responsible. I think that helped build that confidence that I needed to hold my ground. And I think there's teasing. I am very intuitive to and empathetic to have people and their emotions and what they're thinking and doing. So I'm blessed that I don't emotionally respond. That I do have the personality to stop and evaluate, even from childhood. And like I said, being raised by my sisters, and my mom had to go back to work, so my 15-year-old sister, she was in charge of us after school until my dad got home at 6, and she had to start dinner and stuff. And Sharon, the one that's closest to me, her and I got into some good fights with our older 15-year-old sister. So I think that having siblings is a blessing, in that you do develop social skills, and it's not always fun.
Yeah, I've heard that from a number of people, particularly those who grew up in really large families. The old several who would be several years older than me grew up in the old farming type families that would have 7, 8 kids, and and the ones I knew were younger of those, and they all said the same sort of thing. You know, it was a blessing. At times, you know, there's obviously some of the family rivalries, say, that go in, but it does teach you a whole lot there. So you've come into this situation where you've moved to Northern California, total change there. You've lost family members. You're living with your sister. All these things have been happening to you. So all those, no question, they're going to impact you later on as well, right? So kind of talk to us now, professionally, that aspect of your life. You become a mom yourself. How do those lessons of those early years and the struggles and the challenges of all you went through, how do you turn those into, how does that impact you as a parent and professionally and that whole stage of your life?
Yeah. I think one of the other things I wanted to share was really, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but developing the awareness, or to take the moment and really understand what's going on and how you can learn from it or go forward from it. And I think it wasn't until probably a couple of years, my neighbor, to where I live with my sister, he had summer camp Bible study, and then during the week, during the school year, he did an afternoon session, and just kids from around would come. And I think that's one of the things that I realized, that going back to what God's purpose was, there's still not a purpose, but there was something from a growth standpoint. One of the things I loved to do after school was, we had a lot of open area around us, and so I would walk. And one of my fascinations was to follow the deer trail, or the critter trail through the trees, and just I was very good at imagination and creating stories while I was walking around. But it was learning that value of connecting with nature and being present. It's almost like a grounding effect. So that to me is a way to calm or cope with things, is to just go outside in nature. And I'll go into a little more detail about that. But I think that was when I started looking at, okay, so if my parents hadn't died, I wouldn't have moved north. I wouldn't have found this wonderful connection to nature and the value of the outdoors. If that hadn't happened, I would have, just been raised in Cement City and done the activities that are appropriate there. My sister was an outdoors type person. She had a boat. So I learned to water ski. We went camping. I got introduced to a lot of activities that I truly enjoy and love, that I didn't have access to in LA. And so that, as a 12-year-old, was a realization for me. The other thing about the Bible camp was, I truly understood, I went through the mechanics of the Catholic process of accepting Jesus as your Savior, but I didn't really understand what it meant. And I learned more about that in this Bible camp that was right next door. I mean, literally, I'd walk over on Wednesday after school, and we'd go through the lesson, and then they had a wonderful day camp during the summer that I totally enjoyed. And so being able to look at situations and say, okay, that didn't go exactly like I thought it was going to do. So what do I learn from it? What might I do differently if it comes up again? And then how do I you look at it as a blessing, versus something that, failure or trauma.
Yeah, that's something that's kind of what I'm about. What I'm trying to do is that sort of skill is
Mm-hmm.
teachable, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
think we do a good job at that at all culturally. Whether it's done within the family structure, which is where we often will pick it up, not formally, but just if our parents are fortunate enough to model it for us, or we pick it
Right.
up from other family members, or potentially from summer camps are big at that sort of thing, trying to
Yeah.
teach that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Schools don't do that good a job, and kind of going back for a minute to that talk about kids and bullying and things like that, is I've always have said that yes, we do, and we got to do more to try to get kids to stop bullying.
Yeah.
But we got to also remember to help kids deal with being bullied and the
Mm-hmm.
skills of that emotional management of that, because you can't eliminate bullying because there's always going to be jerks out there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but
It
you know,
just the faces change and the techniques change. Even in adulthood, at work, there's bullying.
yeah, right, exactly. So teaching the skill of processing all of that and reframing it, and trying to understand, and managing your own emotions are invaluable skills. We don't do a very good job with that at all, um,
Yeah.
which is it's kind of why I do what I do, and it sounds like that's also played into why you are now doing what you do as well. Um,
Yeah.
so so talk to us a little bit then. You're beginning to understand how nature can help with the mental health and emotional health, and um, you've stayed up in Northern California, right? I mean, that's where you still
Yep.
live. So,
Yep.
talk to us about kind of that next stage of your life, and being a mom and high tech career, and how your lessons are beginning to play into that part of your life, and in particular, how you go about raising your own children.
Yeah. Well, just I'll tap on the career for just a little bit. It's one of those things again. No, if you have the confidence that you're doing what you want to do and you're making the progress that you want to make, then you show up with that confidence. I remember one time I was having to fly out. I was at a pool party, volleyball in the pool, all kinds of great fun stuff going on at this apartment complex. And I was dressed to travel because I was going to go to the airport and get on a plane. And this is in my 20s, and go to the airport and, catch a flight to go to sales training. And I was sitting on the railing of the deck, and this guy just comes up and he goes, God, you have a presence about you that's just amazing. You're observing and watching all the fun stuff, but and enjoying it, but you're still have a different, unique presence. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I have this great, presence. But I was enjoying being there. I wasn't feeling like I was missing out on the fun because I knew I was going off to go to sales training and further my career, and I was excited about doing that too. So I think there's a lot about having your personal direction, knowing it's what's right for you, and not letting the world influence you. We are so much influenced by the people we're surrounded by, so picking those people is important. But also being able to go on with your career. I worked at Intel, and I was a salesperson, one of the first four female salespeople hired for them. They shipped me off to Dallas, so I'm with really the redneck cowboys. No, but So the good news is that I was talking to electrical engineers. Those were my clients. Well, they were all totally curious as to what this female salesperson looked like. So I got into doors that the men couldn't get into. But once I got in the door, I got the 30 questions to evaluate that I had a brain. And literally with these engineers, I would embarrass them because when they got done asking me all these technical questions, which I knew the answers to, I would look at them and I would say, so did I pass? And they'd get beet red because they're engineers. and they would move on to the business at hand. But then there was the other side of it where I had a buyer who, he kept, I should, let's go out on my boat and let's do this and let's do that. And I wouldn't respond to it. I would keep going with the conversation. And one time we were sitting there and he looks at me and he goes, you're either really naive or you're really smart. And I looked at him and I said, I am not naive. and he just chuckled and then he let it go. He stopped with all that flirtation and I was 26 years old, gorgeous. Of course, I'm going to get hit on, but it was just a matter of, again, having the confidence to be myself and not dissuaded. And I had they didn't have a buyer. I was dealing with the operations manager at one of my accounts. And he was an older man, and he literally said, wouldn't you rather be home having kids? And, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So I hate to say it, I said, well, the hell with this shit. So the next time I had an appointment with him, I went into my closet. I got the most girly dress I owned, which I didn't like. And I wore it to our meeting, and I literally took down my confident, appearance and acted like his daughter. And so I was asking for his advice and coaching and all this stuff. And I got the order and built a great relationship with him. And I went home and threw that dress away.
That's a great story. Within that story, it tells a lot about the beliefs that you had, the confidence that you had, your own mindset, and that's that kind of that's what we want people to develop, and you were able to do that, and those lessons that you take. That's the other thing that oftentimes people they don't know how to take the lessons out of events, right? So they don't know how to take what happened and then learn from that. And I was one of those. It took me a while to begin to learn to be able to step back and, all right, I didn't like what just happened. What do I need to learn from it? And I had interviewed a while ago Dr. Sherry Scott, who's written a number of books and all. And one of the things she talked about is everything is a life lesson. And if you don't file that away unconsciously, you're going to keep repeating that in a different context until you learn that lesson.
Yeah.
And
there you go.
She's right. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, there's choices. What we have, one of the things about mindset is we have to realize that all we can control is how we respond to a situation. So I could have gotten flustered. I could have never gone back to that account. I could have asked my boss to take me off of it. I could have gone in and kept battling for my right to be an independent working woman. And, I took this step back and said, well, what are all those things going to do for me? How can I behave? It turned out to be a $2 million account for me. So that was not chump change as far as sales go. So it was the right thing to do. And once I did it once and he got past his image of me and got to know me, we didn't have to play that game anymore. And, he introduced me confidently to his buyer once he hired him. And again, yeah, I had to go through a little bit of getting to know them. But, it's a matter of having, knowing how you're going to respond to a situation, and choose how you're going to respond. And sometimes there isn't a response. Sometimes you just say, okay, that's the way it is. Nothing's coming out of this. I'm moving on. Other times it's like, apologizing or clarifying to try to get a common ground going. But like I said, the key thing is that we just control ourselves and how we receive things and how we respond to it. And, the same thing, when I came into the factory and was working in Folsom, California, I was a senior manager at the time. And so most of my meetings, I am the only woman in the room. Now, nobody's going to look to wanting me to be drama queen or, so I did become one of the guys. I just didn't care. They can treat me like one of the guys. I'm, these aren't personal relationships. These are working relationships. But there was always that I hate to say it, but that mental power struggle. So I learned how to do the male power struggle, and when they were challenging situations, I didn't cower. I spoke my mind. Now, my attitude was at the time, there was so much going on with harassment claims and stuff that in my mind, I was secure that if someone did not like how I was behaving, a man was feeling threatened or challenged by my response, I didn't care, because if they fired me, I would slap them with a harassment suit, and Intel always settles out of court. So I knew I was set. I didn't have to worry about my job. But they never fired me because they didn't, there was no reason to. But, so from that standpoint, I managed a large group of people, and I was nurturing towards them. And I did, review. I didn't, we addressed issues that came up, and we addressed them without getting all emotional and stuff. And it's like, okay, so why did you do it that way? What was, how did it work and stuff? And we would just work through any situations or problems that came up in, approach with the employee of the lesson. And going ahead and not just demanding. I was not a dictator manager. I was definitely a people manager. And I also knew that if my employees were happy, if they were enjoying working, if they felt comfortable and secure and they weren't going to get creamed, then, they performed so much better. And we were more like a second family. And that was important to me.
So this idea of family, right? You obviously successful in your career, and one of the challenges when we think about family dynamics, particularly with both parents working and being career oriented, there's one of the biggest stressors that they self-report themselves is this trying to balance work-life situation. So 35-year career in that, particularly during the teen years, what were some of the ways that you began to try to balance that out and try to find that? I'm sure probably at times you struggled with it as well. What were some of those lessons that you learned then, and then, try to pass on? And again, each stage of your children's lives bring different challenges for us, in part because I spent so many years working with like middle school ages, and even with my own 4 kids, those ages can be so
Yes.
so interesting to put it in a nice way. But talk to us a little bit about what strategies you might have employed, or how you went about trying to do that during those years.
Yeah. So, the one thing that I wish I had done more of is I kind of did the wear hats. So I dropped the kids off at daycare or school, and I took the mom hat off and put the career hat on and went to work. When I got off work, I took that hat off and went back. And I didn't really share my experiences at work because I could have role modeled a lot of resilience. And I could have talked to them more by sharing how my day went. I could have shared the learning lessons of how to get along with people at work. So I missed that opportunity. So when I'm coaching parents, I do incorporate that as part of the career, family and career harmony, because there are so many lessons we deal with at work that can be shared as a learning lesson. And again, it's discussed age appropriate depending upon their age and how much they can comprehend. But you shouldn't say, "Oh, I had a great day." You should come home and say, "Man, I had a really challenging day," or "It just sucked." And be honest, because children need to know their parents are human, and that and that they don't know everything. The first lesson was when I quit Intel because I was too young to retire. I quit to stay home with my kids. Well, I decided my husband also quit, so he was at Intel, and we were fortunate enough to have major investments in it with Intel stock and everything else that they paid us with, that we could walk away. Intel wasn't the company we wanted to work for anymore. So we decided we were going to homeschool so we could travel. Well, I was kind of lazy, and I made my fourth grader daughter do all of the curriculum my sixth grade son was doing because I didn't want to prepare two different levels of class. And I was like, this is a lot of work to do this homeschooling stuff. So I just made her do the same lessons. And so we were doing some biology, and she asked me a question, and I said, "Oh, well, let me look at the book." And I had to look at the chapter and read the chapter, and then I could answer the question. And she kind of cocks her head at me, and she looks at me, and she goes, "You didn't know that?" And I said, "No. And the funnest part is Dad won't know it either because this is all new stuff that they've done." When we were going through school, there were only 3 categories of families of species. Now there's 5. I said, "So you should go ask your dad who thinks he knows it all and see if he can answer the question." But it was a realization to her that, parents don't know everything there is to know. And that was a good lesson at that time. I think like you said, you get into the tweens or the teens, and I was so proud of my son. He was an ice hockey player, and there was this one guy, at practice that just always was an obnoxious jerk. And he would walk by and shove my son into the pillar that was holding, the cement pillar that was holding the building up, and or trip him or squirt water on him, and he was just obnoxious. My son just he didn't respond. He just kept moving on, and I watching from the stands was getting so irritated with this kid. I was losing it. So after one of the practices, I said, I hate to say this, but you have my permission to deck him. And he said, "Mom," he goes, "that's what he wants. He wants to get a rise out of me." He goes, "If I just ignore him, he'll move on to another player and start harassing them." And I looked at my son and I said, "Oh my gosh, you are so wise." And so I said, "You're just better than me. What can I say?" And then the girls, girls are mean. I don't know if the guys went. My husband swears that the boys didn't do it as much, although he said they instigated fist fights when he was in middle school, challenging each other to fist fights. But Mean Girls it's a movie, and it's real. I tell you, I went through it in junior high and lived through it, but I knew my daughters were going to go through it too. And so whenever like I said, I'm very intuitive and always watching my children's moods and actions. And if they start doing something that's that's not characteristic of their normal behavior, I question them. Hey, what's going on? You seem a little off. Can you tell me what's happening in your life? Can you tell me what's going on at school? Whatever those questions are. And a lot of it would surface as to, well, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. And I would have conversations with the girls about how people say things when because they're insecure. A lot of the bullying and such is because they're missing out on something. They maybe don't have a family support structure, and so they're not used to having relationships, and they're uncomfortable with them, and so they, the way to not feel bad is to bully or to pretend to be somebody that they're not, or to deflect their personal feelings onto somebody else so that people aren't focused on them. And, again, that's a lot to say, but when you're parenting, you find the right words to the right age to share that wisdom. And right away, I am just, was teaching them to, you control how you respond. What do you think is going on in that person's mind? Why did they choose to say that to you? My daughter was a freshman, and luckily Facebook had just started coming out, but she had one of her quote, used to be girlfriends, was bad-mouthing her to a group of kids, and it got back to her. And she walked right up to the girl and she said, I don't understand, because they did know each other and they were at one time very social together. She goes, why are you saying that about me? I said, and she said, if you really want him that bad, because it, of course, was over a boy, she goes, you can have him. I'm not interested. But, to have the confidence to be able to walk up and do that was, she was controlling how she was going to respond to what that girl said. And, again, the girl was probably, knowing the girl myself, was probably feeling that, my daughter is popular, she tends to get the good guys, everybody wants to date her, whatever it is could be going through that child's head. And so she was, trying to position herself, above my daughter. And it didn't stop there. It went all 4 years of high school. She was just determined to be on top. It was interesting to watch that girl. But, my daughter didn't care what she thought. And she wasn't her friend anymore. And, one of the other things you have to realize is when somebody says something bad about you to somebody else, if they believe it and they continue to carry that, whatever that person said, they're not really a friend of yours. If, the friend would come and say, hey, so-and-so said this about you. Is it true? They would bring it back to you if they were truly a friend. And, that's, that whole, I call it backstabbing, taking the truth and making it a little obscure or not even being truth at all. That happens so much with the girls. I'm not sure the guys do that, but, so I was there to let them know that I had experienced it. I would share a story of what I went through and how I dealt with it. And yes, it hurts, and you can't help but take it personal. But you have to learn the lesson of, okay, is this a girl I want, to be around? My oldest daughter would help me when my youngest would have birthday parties. She walked by and she overheard a couple of the girls, it's my daughter's birthday. So, of course, she has the right to facilitate what's happening at her birthday. And these girls were sitting there, we live on 7.5 acres. So they were sitting on the hill, and my other daughter happened to walk by, and she heard them saying, oh my gosh, Kirsten's so bossy, and she's just telling us, what to do, and na. And my daughter stopped and said, well, it is her birthday, and it is her party. So yes, she has the right to do that. And she came back and told me And this girl was, again, another one of those girls that just always, she was always up to something. And so I just walked up to her and I said, Claire, if you're not having fun, I am happy to call your mom and tell her to pick you up early. So either you join the party and the festivities or go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And luckily, my daughter, who was having the birthday party, never got to experience any of that. But, it's like those are the types of things that happen with the mean girls.
Yeah. It is definitely different dynamics, teenage boys and teenage girls, too. And, the programs I ran in public schools were predominantly boys. But when we did have girls, boy, sometimes those problems were just really, they could really get magnified and nasty going on. But so much does come from confidence the kids have themselves, right? And when they don't have that confidence, they tend to project all the negativity. They always, oh, somebody's saying something about me. It's intended to be mean. It's intended, and inevitably, with all the years of doing this, when you began to try to break down some of those emotional and belief systems around that teenager, what they were carrying with them, and reframe those, then those problems didn't become so big because they just kind of went, doesn't matter. And sometimes there's one student I did a case study with her and got her on video and stuff. She really struggled anxiety-wise, and a lot of things were going on. She was a really nice girl, but she didn't have a lot of friends, and it wasn't, lots of things were happening in her life. Didn't have confidence. She didn't come to school much. When she did, she didn't attend. When we, were able to break those barriers down, get rid of some of those beliefs, reframe some of those situations, we had her in 8th grade. By the time she graduated, she actually got into a really difficult school. So it had like a 7% acceptance rate. And she did exceptionally well. And one of the other girls who was in the program at the same time, they became friends and are still friends to this day, several years later. And it all began with that, with that confidence and some shifting of beliefs and things like that. We are nearing the end of our time, so I want to give you a chance to kind of talk a little bit briefly about what it is you're doing now, right? And even how people can get in touch with you, but kind of talk how you've now taken all these life experiences that you've had and how you're helping other people.
Yeah. So I was drawn to be I've done a lot of different coaching. I love business coaching because I have a lot of business experience. But I was called more to being a life coach, and it's evolved over when I got my grandbabies. So 2 years ago, my first grandson was born, and it just brought back so much emotions of how much I love parenting. And I think what started me thinking about switching to being a parent coach is that my son, when he told me he was having a baby, he says, "I just hope I can be half the parent you were, Mom." And I was like, "Really?" He goes, "You were amazing." They can't really tell me specifically what was amazing, but they just his was more, just the support, the being there, the guidance. So then I thought, oh, well, maybe this is where my wisdom lies and what I can share with others, the do's and don'ts, or things to think about. So I asked my second child, my daughter, and she said, I go, "Do you remember when I used to do this and that?" She goes, "No, Mom, I really don't remember that." So they don't remember the little things. Like I would wake my kids up every morning doing something silly, whether it was I'd grab a hat, a scarf, or something to walk into their bedrooms and say, good morning. And I'd have, they hate my accents because I'm terrible at them. And I'd have some goofy accents and I'd say something goofy and they would laugh. And I started their morning off laughing because to me, that is such a positive energy. In fact, I even did a nasty thing and said, I have a big responsibility with how they start their day. And one day I decided to be a witch. And I just got up and I was cranky and I was miserable and we all carpooled. So we all carpooled. They went to a private school right next to Intel. My husband went off to Intel. So every morning and night we carpooled, all 5 of us together. And I did everything I could to demonstrate how cranky I was and not supportive. And literally everybody had a bad day. So I, acknowledged to myself that, this is a big responsibility I have. How I show up in the morning has an impact on how everybody else shows up. And so, I took it seriously. But my daughter said, I don't remember any of that. She goes, what I remember, Mom, is that you were there for us, but you also trusted us. You trusted us to make decisions and take directions, and you believed in us that we were going to do the right thing. And part of that is because that's how I train them. I believe in giving kids the opportunity to participate in decisions. I am not a dictator parent. Yes, there are certain things you just have to dictate. Don't touch that, you're going to burn your hand. There are, age-appropriate dictations. But, from a standpoint of whenever they decided they wanted to try an activity, I always looked at what they were involved in, and we sat down and discussed. So my daughter, my youngest, was in advanced algebra, or she was in advanced math. She was doing geometry at 7 a.m. This was in 8th grade. 7 a.m. she was taking geometry, and then she'd go to school, and then she wanted to do club basketball and club volleyball. And I asked her, I said, that's an awful lot to commit to and still do your homework. I said, are you sure you want to do that? I mean, that's a lot of stress you're putting on yourself. And she goes, Mom, I think I can handle it. I said, okay, I will let you do this, but as soon as you start feeling any stress or feeling that you're overwhelmed, you come to me right away. You don't wait. And so she lasted about a month and a half or 2 months. And then she came to me and she says, I can't do it. It's too much. I'm going nuts. And I said, okay, well, let's look at the activities. Do you want to drop out of geometry? She goes, hell no. She goes, I earned that slot. And then I said, okay, do you want, which volleyball and basketball? She goes, well, to be honest, I'm too short for volleyball. I'm not as good at it, so I think I'll drop the volleyball. And so she went and talked to her coach, and her coach said, hey, I understand. I have a little sister that's doing volleyball and basketball. I totally understand. The basketball coach wasn't quite as understanding, but he didn't, she ended up choosing basketball. And she went on to play freshman basketball at high school where she wouldn't have been able to play volleyball. So she chose to drop it. The coach said, hey, if you still want to come and practice with us, you're welcome to drop in anytime. What a great coach. Of course, it was a female. A very nurturing type of person. And she never did, volleyball was not her sport, but I let her go through, and I know there's a lot of parents out there, well, you signed up, so you have to finish it. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I have that belief also that you have to do enough to know. And if it isn't working for you, we talk about why it's not working. And if there is justification, we'll do something about it. So it's giving them decisions. My son, he came back at me as an adult and he goes, oh, Mom, none of those things ever happened. And what I would do with the kids is that, when they were going out to do something, I would say, okay, so let's look at this and, what could possibly happen? what could be some consequences that happen at that event, or whatever they were doing. And and we would talk through what would they do if it happened. So my belief is that if you know it's possible to happen and you have a plan, it's not going to happen. And so they never did, because they were consciously aware of the scenarios. And, so a lot of times it's, when they're going to a party or something, there where consequences could happen. Well, my son came back and, as an adult, and said, "Oh, Mom, I'm so tired of you. None of those things ever happened." And I looked at him and I said, "Is it because you were aware they could and you avoided the situation?" I said, "Or is it because you were confident and you knew how you were going to handle it, and therefore it didn't happen?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Ooh, you little snake," because he didn't have a comeback. But, so I think what my goal is with my parent coaching is, to help parents be present, build a relationship, build that bonding, loving relationship. My oldest daughter said, "You're my best friend," because, we talked on a personal level. It was not hard for me to talk to them about sex because we already had that relationship. So it was just a natural discussion to have, and things they needed to think about when they wanted to have sex for the first time. And, and it wasn't awkward because we had built that bonded relationship and we had been talking about things all along. And, we had roundtable discussions because, with two working parents, it's like, okay, well, if you sign up for something, that impacts the whole family. So, we would have what I call King Arthur table. We'd say, okay, it's time to chat about the family calendar. We had a family calendar. Everybody had their color. They could go and see their activities, and the kids, when they're young, they love to see their color on the calendar. And they could, you start giving them responsibilities early. All my kids knew how to do their own laundry by the age of 10. So, you just choose how you're interacting and what role they play in the family. So I love to work with people who are starting their family before they get pregnant, when they're pregnant, and after they're have their child. But trying to get them to think about ahead of time some of the ways that they want their family life to be, how they want to parent, how are they working with their partner as far as supporting the family, and then building those relationships. I still have great conversations with my adult children. They're very different.
Yeah.
I walk away and roll my eyes sometimes, because it's like, oh my gosh, they're they're struggling with still some identity things that are going on, decisions they have to make, and they're 34, 32, and 27 now, and so they're still in a growth phase. They're still their lives are still evolving. So if you want to reach out and chat, my website is real easy. It's marilyn-robinson.com, and there's a calendar on there that you can hook up and schedule some time to talk with me.
Well, thank you so much for the time and for sharing. The work that you do is so valuable and so important. Most of us who go into parenthood and all that, really what we rely on was what we saw how our parents were. And sometimes we were fortunate and had good parents and good models, and many times maybe not so much. So it's important work, right? The family really is, so often it seems cliche, but it really is kind of the bedrock of things. When families aren't working well, those issues go out into the community and beyond. So thank you for the work that you do as well. And for all of you out there, I'm sure there's a lot of information that you're going to be able to take with you. And, there's something Marilyn said right towards the very end that kind of indicate as parents our own mindset and our own beliefs that we got handed down to us begin to interplay in how we go about parenting. And we need to begin to recognize those. And the challenges that you as parents have, whether it's financial challenges or balancing that work life kind of challenges and the stress that comes with that, whatever it is, the same with your children, the challenges that they have with relationships and academic stress and all those things, they can all be pointed right back to our mindsets. And, as parents, we will invest tens of thousands of dollars literally on all kinds of things, from camps and testing and tutoring and eventually college. And we don't invest in the one thing that's most likely to make a big difference in their life long term, and that is showing them how to train their own mindset. And that same goes for us as well. So for any of you who are listening to this, I typically offer a half-hour strategy session where we really strategize about the goals and needs that you have as a parent, as a business owner, athlete, whatever it is, and we develop a little strategy together. And I usually charge $175 for the half-hour session, but if you're listening to this, I'll waive that. It's important to do. Just ask that when you schedule that time that you are fully vested in it. And all you need to do to schedule that, if you go to coachchuck360.com, first send me a text. You'll see a contact me section. You can send me a text, first name, last name, best email, and just say podcast gift. And I will send you a unique link to my calendar, the special calendar, where you will get that half-hour strategy session for free. So just, once again, coachchuck360.com. You can contact me, first name, last name, podcast gift, and I'll make sure you get a link to that. So until the next show, I hope you all live life to its fullest.